More analysis about this latest diplomacy. Let's bring in France 24's Armen Georgian. Armen, how unusual is it for three EU heads of state like this, from the Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovenia, to go into a war zone to meet with another president?
Well, there are a number of signals that are being sent here. First of all, that these three prime ministers are taking a train, the same trains that hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians have taken, ordinary people have taken to flee. The fact that they're going into, or have gone into, a city that is being bombed, and that obviously involves an element of risk, even though they're not as much at risk as many Ukrainian civilians, but nonetheless, that sends a signal. In terms of these actual three countries, so Poland, Czech Republic, and Slovenia that we have on our map, there's a symbolism attached to this in the individual countries, Jeannie. Firstly, Slovenia was the first former Yugoslav republic to join the European Union. It's long been seen in the western part of the EU as perhaps the most western-leaning former Yugoslav republic. The Czech Republic, meanwhile, is, of course, the home of the Prague Spring of 1968, so long before the Arab Spring. That liberalization was crushed by tanks from the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. And then Poland, of course, a direct neighbor, so we'll talk about that separately. But certainly a symbolism attached to these three representatives from these three countries going. And remember that they're also representing the European Union, because you're not going to have a situation where, a whole sort of big group of EU heads of state or government go to Kyiv. But this particular visit was coordinated with the European Commission and the European Council. So in a sense, these prime ministers are representing the EU as a whole.
Armen, Poland, the most immediate neighbor to Ukraine. How is it being affected by all of this?
Well, first of all, let's show you some facts about the economic, mainly about the economic, financial trade ties between these two countries. Poland in 2021 became Ukraine's second largest trading partner. Poland is one of the top 5 importers of Ukrainian agricultural products, and now Poland hosts more than 1,720,000 Ukrainian refugees. That's a figure from the United Nations from March the 13th. So obviously that will have gone up even more since the UN last published the figures. So it is very, very closely tied to everything that's happening in Ukraine. It's got a long border, more than 500 kilometers between Ukraine and Poland, so it is, in a sense, the most affected of all of the EU countries. Bearing in mind, it also has a long border with Belarus, which is part of this conflict. So, yes, Poland definitely very, very concerned about any widening of the war, but also just the existing long-term impacts with a big refugee population. We remember what happened in Lebanon and Jordan at the outset of the Syrian war, as that ground on for years and years. Neighboring countries were hosting large refugee populations. So Poland is understandably seeing and feeling the effects of this conflict very differently from countries in the west of the European Union that are simply much further away from all of this.
Armen, thanks for that. France 24's Armen Georgian.